Hello, welcome everybody. We'll start today with the final chapter on the discussion regarding the 12 bhavnas. So as we start, let me just first share my screen. Okay, let's start with the prayer, then we'll get straight into it. Namo Orientanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Mangalanancha Subvesim Padamam Havai Mangalam Veera Sarvasura Surendra Mahito Viramida Sansrita Virena Vieta Swakarmanichayo Viraya Nityam Nama Vira Tirthamidam Prautamatulam Vira Shigho Ramtapo Vire Sri Truti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Virabhadram Disa अंगूठे अमृतवसे लब्धितणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदाता. I'm just putting this slide on just to remind everybody, though I'm sure you're all by this time tired of this slide, but it's important for me to remind myself that what all this is about as well. So far, we have discussed 9 of the 12 bhavnas. And it's a journey, as I was trying to explain last time. The first 6 bhavnas, Anitya, Asharan, Ekatva, Anyatva, Asuchi, and Sansar, are all about understanding and coming to terms with our situation as an entity, a life, or as a human being. But this applies to anybody who realizes, even those in the animal kingdom who remember their past lives, those with five-sensed animals with a mind can have a recollection of their past lives, and in that situation they can actually understand and contemplate their true nature. And once a person realizes that everything that we see around us and that we get attached to is temporary, that we do not really have the support of anyone or anything in the crucial moments of life. We cannot completely rely on any organization or any relative or any friend, because ultimately for the final journey we all go alone. So Anitya, Asharan, the only person who can give everlasting support and everlasting presence throughout our journey through life after life is Dev, Guru, and Dharma, and the knowledge that imparts to us. We are alone, ekatva bhavana. Everything outside of us that is not of the soul is not ours. Anyatva, that the body that we get so attached to is in reality full of things that we would not really like to see or get very close to. But the soul is imprisoned in the body as long as it has not achieved nirvana or gone to moksha. And it tempers our attachment and love of our bodies, and accept that by its very nature, the body is temporary, no matter how long your life may be. By nature, it is designed to slowly deteriorate. There's something that I came across recently, written by a very prominent physician who was a teacher when I was studying medicine in India, and who had subsequently, even from that time onwards, but subsequently become quite vocal about the direction, his objections to the direction in which medical progress had taken. So one very pertinent thing that he had observed in this article that he had written in Gujarati, the name of this doctor was Dr. Manu Kothari. He's passed away a few years ago. But one very revealing thing that he mentioned is that disease and old age are the fundamental qualities of the body. In Gujarati, he said that rog e sarir no dharma che. And he said that death is actually a function of time. So he says, mrityu e samay no dharma che. And what he meant by that was that one doesn't necessarily die of a disease, though these days we cannot do a death certificate without a cause of death. We can say old age as a cause of death, but otherwise we have to explain the disease or the process that resulted in the death of a person. What he is saying here is that he is distinguishing the two completely. He says death happens when the time has come. Disease will happen inevitably for everybody, sooner or later. And therefore, this attachment to the body, which is temporary, but which is also full of unpleasant things, is asuchi bhavana. And then sansar bhavana is about understanding the nature of our journey from one life to other, and understanding that that journey is predominantly filled with unhappiness, which we don't usually realize if everything is going well in our lives. But sansar bhavana is about understanding that in the grand scheme of things, true happiness is not something that sansar can ever give us. Because whatever we experience in sansar is never permanent, that even the best and the luckiest and the wealthiest and the most nicest person with everything in life will never experience that permanently throughout his life. But even if he does, say, for example, in Devlok, Devs can experience pure material happiness throughout their lives. But even our Shastras say that in the last 6 months of their life, which could be very, very long, when they realize that they are going to pass from that abode in a few months' time, they get very upset and they grieve about losing all this great level of material wealth and happiness that they have enjoyed for a long time. And that in itself is a painful process. So even their happiness is not untainted. So understanding the nature of our situation in this life through the first 6 bhavanas, we then start the journey, the contemplations on what is it that actually has brought me, the soul, into this situation. And to understand that, we first have to understand the true nature of the soul, what it is in its purest state in moksha, and then understand through the first 6 bhavanas how much we have lost, but then understand why we have lost it. So Ashrav Bhavana tells us that we have been accumulating karmas throughout our lives and continue to accumulate them for all kinds of actions that we perform and all kinds of feelings and thoughts and our state that we harbor, not realizing the truth. So for many reasons, we leave the doors open for karma to flow in and bind to the soul to ultimately result in further difficulties, further pain, and sometimes further pleasure, because that is also a function of the karmas, which are good karmas. But ultimately, both the good and the bad are not of the soul. So in the state of moksha, which is the true nature of the soul, you want to get rid of all karmas. So Ashrav somewhere is teaching us how to protect ourselves and prevent karmas from entering and binding to the soul. Meaning, how do we close the doors and the windows to the entry of karmas to the soul? Ashrav, somewhere. Nirjara is about what can we do to destroy the existing karmas. And there, last week, we talked about contemplations, tap, meaning restricting our choices, limiting our material pleasures by limiting the food, etc., that we eat. All that is part of tap. But that which we do in that way is visible to others, and it's called Baya tap. But the more important tap, that is much more powerful, is Abhyantar tap. What we are doing on every Tuesday evening is Swadhyay. That is a type of Abhyantar tap, and that contemplation, that attention to something spiritual also has the power of getting rid of karmas. Then there is Prayaschit, Dhyan, Kausag. All those things are quite powerful, Dhyan being the most powerful, and that is something that one can slowly understand and start implementing as we progress spiritually. So Ashrav Samvar Nirjara, those are the last three, the seventh, eighth, and ninth bhavana. Today, we are just going to concentrate again on the bhavanas which go deeper into understanding our good fortune, and if we have not achieved some aspects of the development, then how we may actually come to that. Now, Dharma Bhavana, Lok Swarup Bhavana, and Bodhi Durlabh Bhavana. I'm going to concentrate mainly on the Bodhi Durlabh Bhavana, because I think that is an area that requires a deeper understanding, and we won't do justice to any of those today, but just introduce you to some of the concepts. Let's just first understand the meanings of these words. Dharma is dharma. Dharma is not just religion. Dharma is the true nature of a particular entity or object that you're talking about. So what are the basic qualities of the soul? So those are the dharma of the soul. But what is the fundamental nature of material? And there is a dharma of material. But also in this context, it is used to explain right conduct. That is dharma. What is the right conduct for anybody to progress spiritually? That is dharma suakhyatata bhavana. That is the full name of this particular bhavana. Lok Swarup bhavana is something that a lot of people find very interesting, because this is a subject that we have all heard about, but find it difficult to understand and accept in the light of what science has been teaching us. Lok Swarup bhavana is the description of the universe that our Jain texts contain and what it looks like. So Lok Swarupa Bhavana is a contemplation on the nature of the universe and our place in it. So in many ways, Lok Swarupa Bhavana is a contemplation of how insignificant and minuscule we are in this vast space that houses the whole universe. So we'll discuss that very briefly. And Bodhi Durlabh Bhavana is about understanding that how difficult and rare it is to even reach to this point of having an interest in understanding the true nature of ourselves. So if one begins to ask the questions, who am I? Even getting to that stage is a huge step for spiritual development. What is my true nature? Am I my body? And if we get to that answer, says maybe I cannot be my body, I must be separate from my body, because I am thinking about my body. I possess my body, so I cannot be the body because somebody else or something else is possessing this body. My mind, am I my mind? I cannot be my mind because I am stating that it is my mind, that I am the possessor of the mind, so I must be separate from the mind. Then who is this I? Spiritually, beginning to ask those questions is a huge step. And a lot of us find that quite difficult. But if you look at how we learn some of these concepts, we get caught up in the basic difficulty that we have got embedded in our psyches, is that unless something is visible or something has got an absolute proof, we cannot believe that it is true. So the question that arises is that who knows that there is a soul? We can't see it. And if we can't see it, it cannot exist. And that concept in itself is very difficult to get beyond. But even if we do accept this through logic, to actually accept that and internalize it as the soul, understanding and completely understanding our true nature as different from the body and our associations around it, is extremely difficult, because we are so attached that separating ourselves from all those attachments is impossible. And until it happens at that level spiritually, just accepting it mentally does not necessarily have the same value. So the soul's progress really starts when that concept is actually accepted deep inside. And even for a moment, if that concept is accepted, then that is probably the biggest step in the soul's spiritual development. Because even if you understand and accept that internally within your soul, and then lose that understanding and that acceptance after a short while, even that gaining that understanding and acceptance for a short while is one of the biggest steps that a soul in its journey will ever take. And it's the most fundamental, and I don't know if I explain this, but to my mind, that is the second biggest lottery that anyone can ever win. So that is getting to the stage of getting bodhi. Bodhi means samyaktva, and bodhi durlabh means that it is so difficult. Durlabh means it is rare, it is almost unattainable, and the lucky few who get to that stage are very, very rare. So in many ways, and many rare in terms of the universal terms, when you're talking about infinite numbers of life. Okay, so with that brief introduction, let's go back to Dharma Bhavana. I don't have slides on Lok Swarup and Bodhi Durlabh, unfortunately, because I didn't have time to prepare them. But we will talk about those as we go along. Dharma Bhavana is a contemplation on true Dharma. What is true Dharma? So there are many religions, there are many ways of looking at things, but if we look at the nature of the person who propounded or who established a dharma, so there are two basic qualities that can give you a conviction or complete faith in the propounder and what they've said, if they meet these two basic qualities or requirements. One, are they without any attachment or hatred? So are they completely neutral to, and are they completely impartial to every living being in the universe? Now, complete impartiality and complete neutrality is in fact absolute compassion and absolute love. Now, that is a concept which also can be quite difficult to understand, because we equate impartiality and non-attachment as lack of interest, and lack of interest in the welfare of somebody. So if I say that I'm impartial to whether you progress or not, then if we are saying this to our friend or to our children or to our spouse, then that may be construed as not having enough love for that person, or it may be construed as not being interested in that person. Whereas what I'm saying here now is that a Tirthankar Bhagwan, even though he is vitrag, meaning completely unattached and completely without any hatred to anybody, completely neutral and impartial to every living thing. Now, that is a concept to be understood. Even with that, their whole journey as Tirthankars begins with absolute compassion for every living thing, meaning absolute love and compassion that if I had my way, if I had the power, I would ensure that every living being in this universe will achieve nirvana or moksha and will be free of all their attachment to karmas, which brings them unhappiness eternally. So I understand that is the idea that goes through their being in the third life before they become Tirthankars, and they firmly establish this understanding within themselves, and that is how the Tirthankar Nam Karma is acquired and solidified. It's that compassion and that love, but that love and compassion is brought about by a deep understanding, though not complete achievement yet, of vitragata, meaning that attachment and hatred are the same, different sides of the same coin. That true compassion can only stem from understanding the true nature of our state in this universe. And the true nature of our state in this universe is that we are all bound by karmas, we are all bound by ignorance, and we make choices that pull us down further into a path that will continue our cycle in sansar, in life and death, until we begin to understand our true nature, until we understand what is right, what is wrong, what it is that we need to do, what it is that we need to not do. We cannot really achieve any progress or any level of true happiness. And it is with that understanding and that compassion that all life in this universe is unhappy because of that, that the Tirthankar starts on this journey in that third life before they become Tirthankars, and says that if I had the power, I would try and get every living being into that stage within the limits of what is possible, obviously. They acquire a great degree of that power, and that is why they established the Tirth, and that's why they're called Tirthankaras. So they are without hate or attachment, but that alone may not be enough for them to say the absolute truth. So if somebody is saying something and you say, okay, I'm neutral to you, and I will give absolute judgment, which, or I will tell you what is right and wrong, and I will be completely honest with you, as I will be completely honest with every other living being, because I have total love for them. But do they also have total knowledge? If somebody says that I love every living being, not all religions say that, and I will teach them or show them the right path, but then they need to have the knowledge to show that right path. And if that knowledge is incomplete, if that knowledge has got limitations, then by its very nature, that knowledge cannot be the absolute truth. So our Tirthankar Bhagwans who have propounded this dharma to us have got the qualities of vitragata, meaning no attachment, no rag, and no dvesh, and no attachment and no hatred. And also they have total knowledge, omniscience, which we say keval gnan. So whatever they utter is completely true from all its aspect. So one of the fundamental principles of this dharma is that it states things from a point of view. The whole truth is what you see from all different aspects of that particular truth. And we've explored this to an extent in the other classes. So, Syadvad, Kevuli Kathit, Keval Gnan Jane Hoye, Vitrag, Vitrag Sarvagna, Isya Gun Bhane, Na Manya Na Puja. That is one of the statements in the Atichar that we recite during Paryushan on Chaudas and Savansari and Chomasi Chaudas. So, what have these Tirthankas actually preached in a very basic, fundamental expression of what is the right conduct? There are these 10 things. The words that I've chosen to translate what is said in Gujarati and probably more so in Sanskrit in the text that we refer to, these words do not actually do justice to everything that those words mean. So, for example, with M. Chandracharya's Yoga Sastra in his chapters on the 12 bhavanas, what he's talking about, Sansar Sagarma Dupto Nathi, meaning anybody who accepts this, do not sink in this vast ocean of sansar. And that dharma, those who accept that dharma, is sanyam. Now, he describes sanyam. Sanyam means the path that a monk follows, or a limited path that we as Shravaks might follow. And he translates that into pranini daya, meaning kindness. Absolute kindness for all living things. Truth is truth, meaning total commitment to always being truthful. Sauch. Now, the Gujarati word or the word that we use for this is non-stealing in English, but the Gujarati word is adatta dan. So, adatta meaning anything that's not been given to you is adatta. So, a monk will not pick up your pen if it is lying beside you and you're having a conversation. Will not pick up a pen and use it without explicitly asking your permission for borrowing it and establishing that you have actually lent it or given it willingly. So if there is a reluctance on your part, because some of us get very attached to our things and find it very difficult. Oh, this is my favorite pen. I cannot lend it to you. What if it gets lost? If there is that kind of reluctance, then a monk will not touch anything like that. And same thing with food and everything like that. They will only take what has been given to them. So non-stealing, celibacy, we all understand. But brahmacharya or celibacy also has a wider meaning. It's not just about the pleasures of the sense of touch. It is also about the pleasures of the other senses. So restricting your exposure and enjoyment of the senses is more what this particular term means. Aparigraha meaning non-possessiveness. Tap, you all understand tap, meaning restrictions, limitations, and suffering, bodily discomfort and pain, because you want to establish and remind yourself that you are separate from the body and the body is not important. Forgiveness, again, the word is kshama. Kshama conveys a bit more than just simple forgiveness. It conveys a generosity which also establishes that you have forgiven and forgotten. When you give kshama or ask for kshama from somebody, you are asking them, please forgive me for any wrong that I might have done, but please also wipe that out from your memory, that we are on a clean slate, that you do not harbor or hold any grudge. And when we give forgiveness to somebody, and we do this every year, at that point in life, when we have forgiven somebody, we've also cleaned the slate and says that I got hurt because of this particular behavior that you did towards me. I now forgive you. I look at you without any grudge, but also accept that what you might have done at that time is something that I've forgotten. Now, if we harbor the idea that that person is like that and he always does something like that, The word forgiveness does not convey that kind of full extent of that understanding. The word kshama does. Okay? Humility, the Gujarati word is namrata, means you are humble. And the crux of humility is what? When you begin to stop feeling any great sense of achievement for all the qualities and achievements that you might have had, when you stop feeling pride in those, in the true sense, what you are actually understanding is that every life has that potential, that you are no greater than anybody else. They may not have necessarily attained that position just yet, but the potential is there, and sooner or later they may reach that stage or they may surpass that stage much faster than you may. So having that understanding about all our achievements and all our talents and being humble about it and recognizing. So humility is also about recognizing the good in others and celebrating that. So if we see somebody's virtues, knowledge, wealth, everything at a much greater level than ours, then the term humility namrata conveys the idea that you celebrate the good in others, that you actually have the vision to recognize what is good in others and have the generosity of the heart to actually accept that and be joyful in that knowledge that somebody has gone so far in that direction or in that journey. So that is what humility also conveys. Simplicity means sararta. And again, simplicity of the mind is not talking about lack of understanding and lack of knowledge. Simplicity is a spiritual quality of the simplicity of understanding about and clarity in understanding a particular situation. And that simplicity, saralta, comes when one actually has deep knowledge and an instinctive understanding of ourselves and other people. So in fact, if we use or just use the word simple, somebody is simple or he's got simplicity, that may convey a lack of intellect to some people. Whereas here, what this means is that simplicity is actually combined with probably a much greater emotional intelligence and general intelligence, which has got to the point of being a spiritual quality. That is simplicity. And I've used the word generosity here. The actual Gujarati term or Sanskrit term is nirlobhata, meaning the lack of desire to hold on to things, meaning the acquisitiveness, greed, lack of greed is what this is talking about, generosity. So these are the 10 different qualities of somebody who follows dharma to its best extent, and that establishes the path to spiritual progress. You may hear that sadhuna das dharma. There are very good books of das dharma lakshan from the there are some excellent authors. There's one particular that I remember is Hukum Chand Baril from the Digambar sect, who has written a very beautiful book called Das Lakshana Dharma, which talks about all these virtues. So if you ever get time, these are in English and Hindi, this Das Lakshana, sorry, in Gujarati and Hindi, but I'm sure that there is material available on the internet as well in English. Lok Swarup. No slides on the next two, but let's just talk about what is Lok. Again, just a revision of something that I think we've probably discussed right at the beginning. That the universe, as described by Jainism, is from the top to the bottom. The length of that is given in units called Rajju, which is an infinite almost level of distance. Where we are is called Madhyalok. It is in the middle. Below us, we got space of 7 Rajus, and above us got space of 7 Rajus. At the top of the universe, touching that space where there is nothing, which is called Alok Akash, is the Siddh Shila. Where the universe is, and what we are discussing is called Lok Akash. Lok Akash is different from Alok Akash because Alok Akash is just space. Alok Akash does not have any material. It does not have any medium which can assist bodies or material or the soul to move from one place to other, or cannot assist anything to stay still. So Alok Akash is the border between Lok Akash and Alok Akash is a border which separates the ability of bodies to move or to stay still. So they do not have what is called dharmastikai or adharmastikai. Dharmastikai is the medium that helps bodies move from one place to another. By bodies, I mean the soul, material, everything. And adharmastikai is what helps bodies to stay still in a place. So those two forces are only present through the Lok Akash, which is that shape that you have all seen, or Oshwal site. The temple is in the middle of that. If you face the temple and look on your right, you can see the shape of the universe as described by Jainism. And that is what we are talking about. That is Lok Akash. At the top, as I said, is Siddh Shila. And all souls that achieve nirvana, go to moksha, will go straight up to above the Siddh Shila and stop where at the border of Lok Akash and Alok Akash, because they cannot, the soul cannot travel beyond that border because there is no Dharmastikai or Adharmastikai. That is at the top. At the bottom, the 7 Rajus from where we are downwards, there are the 7 Naraks, and it is shaped like an inverted funnel like this. The 7th at the bottom, the 1st at the top, but beyond the surface and before the first Narak, we also have the abodes of some of the devs. They are called Bhavanpati devs. In the middle is called Madhyalok. That's where we are. The place that we are at is part of Bharat Kshetra. Bharat Kshetra is an area at the southern tip of Jambudvip. Jambudvip is the central landmass at the center of which there is the Meru Parvat. So Jambudvip has got several other kshetras or several other landmasses. There is Mahavide Kshetra, Airavat Kshetra, and there are other landmasses. You may maybe at some stage, if you are ever doing a class on that, we'll show you diagrams which are depicting all this, but you can find a lot of information on this. And if some of you are interested, there is an excellent series on Jain geography that has been narrated by Dr. Godha, I think. There are lots of YouTube videos. I think he's done about 4 or 5 or maybe more, couple of hour lectures, which actually is a very good explanation of the nature of the universe, and according to Jainism, but it is in Hindi, but I think a lot of you may not find it difficult, but it's worth listening to it. I started something some time ago, but finding a couple of hours over a few weeks to listen to 10, 15 hours of lectures is quite difficult. But those of you who may have time would find that quite interesting. So in the middle, we got Jambudvip. At the southern tip of that, we got Bharat Kshetra, which is a very small part of Jambudvip. And the measures, the lengths that are described are given to describe this are also in yojans. And in this context, a yojan means, and I've heard slightly different interpretations, something from 3,600 or 700 miles to 4,000 miles. That is one yojan. Jambudvip is said to be 1 lakh yojan, meaning 100,000 yojan from north to south and from east to west. And that is 1 lakh yojan, Bharat Kshetra that we are in, and we only know a very small part of it. The north-south diameter of Bharat Kshetra is described as being 526 yojans. So to get that into miles, you will multiply that by 4,000. Then in the middle, we've got Meru Parvat, which is where the Tirthankar Bhagwans take the Tirthankar for the celebration of their birth soon after they are born. And there's a lot of description about Meru Parvat, and then there are other kshetras. Surrounding Jambudvip, there is Lavan Samudra, Lavan meaning salty. There is the ocean, salty ocean surrounding that there is another landmass, surrounding that there is another ocean, surrounding that there is another landmass, and that it goes on and on and on, until at the end of the universe, at that level, in the middle level, you come across the last ocean, which is called Swayam Bhurman. And that is a Sankhya Dweep. Dweep means islands of land masses, and Samudra meaning oceans. So this ocean that surrounds us is made of salty water, but the other oceans are not necessarily made of salty water. There are other things. Kheer Samudra, so it's like milk. So that is what is described in the Jain texts about the nature of the middle level. And then above there, that level, we got the Devloks, we also got the Tara Mandal, we got the sun, the moon, and it goes on. So Jambudvip is one, then you have Ghat Ki Khand, that is another landmass, the next one, and then there is Puskara Vart Dvip. Puskara Vart Dvip, only half of it is part of what is known as the Adi Dvip. Adi Dvip means, Adi means 2.5. Adi Dvip, Dvip means island. So there's 2.5 islands, Jambudvip, Ghat Ki Khand, and Ardh Puskara Vart Dvip. Within that Adi Dvip, we've got the 15 kshetras that we talk about, 5 Bharats, 5 Airavats, and 5 Mavide. And within those 15 kshetras, only Tirthankars can be born. So, contemplating the nature of this vast universe and where we are and what our journeys through this universe has been is part of that contemplation. And the last contemplation, Bodhi Durlabh. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is the most important, but we won't be able to cover it in any great depth. But let me just simply describe that for the soul in its journey through life, the first lottery, as we said, that we win is when somebody goes to moksha and we escape Nigodh and get into circulation. So from Nigodh, where we didn't go anywhere, we got born and died so many times within one breath time, and had very little part of our knowledge of our true nature exposed, so we had no understanding of anything. But when some soul goes to moksha, there releases space for one person to escape Nigodh, and that soul then comes into circulation. And we've all won that lottery. That's why we are here. And then that soul slowly progresses from many different life forms. And how rapidly or how soon that, as we said as we discovered in the example of Marudeva Mata, escaping Nigodh, being a plant in a tree in the next life, and then being a human being. So that journey through one sensed to two sensed to three sensed to fourth sensed to five sensed, and from animal, five sense animal to five sense human, does not necessarily have to follow that sequence. It can be, as in this case about Marudeva Mata, we saw that from one sensed, from Nigodh to one sensed plant or tree, and then straight to becoming a human being, and then straight going to moksha from that life. That is an extremely rare event, but most of us have gone through various stages in this life for an infinite amount of time, but not necessarily the progress has all been upwards. So we have acquired some perception, we have acquired some knowledge, and we have sinned again and gone right down back to unsensed. We may have even gone back to Nigod, but we would still be in circulation and it would be easier to escape from that part of Nigod. But we have gone through sansar or life infinite or an infinite amount of time through all these different stages. With some grace, as we have begun to develop some understanding of our true nature and slowly begin to acquire a degree of moral sense, then we begin to do the right things and slowly progress. But the first step that actually brings us to the position where we can begin to progress spiritually is that last cycle of our journey through sansar or through the universe is called Charam Avartkal. Even this is an infinite amount of time, but Charam means the last, Avart means that last cycle of circulation. Now, when we enter that Charam Avart, meaning the last cycle, we have developed a degree of spiritual awareness and degree of spiritual progress. It is likely that we are all at that stage, but it's impossible to say without a Keval Gnani actually enlightening us on that. If we are in that Charamavarth Kal, then the souls progress slowly through that is described in 8 stages, which are equivalent to the 8 stages that Patanjali Yoga also describes. So there is a comparison between what Patanjali Yoga describes as the 8 stages, Yam, Niyam, and the concepts of that development within that Jain texts describe. Those are called Yoga Drasti. So there are 8 stages of that, and there are texts on that. It's called that 8 levels have got an equivalence in the 8 levels that Patanjali Yoga describes as well. So those are the stages of spiritual development. On these developments, the names that go by is called Mitra, Tara, like that. They're all individual drastis. And at each stage, the soul gets rid of some major fault, acquires some major virtue, and then slowly progresses upwards. Now, when the soul gets to the level where it loses a huge amount of its karma, particularly monia karma, and becomes extremely light, meaning in terms of its burden of karmas, and begins to have an understanding of its true nature and makes a huge effort to actually pierce this knot of attachment and hatred. That stage is called Granthi Bhed. Granthi is a knot of Rag and Dvesh. And when the soul reaches a particular stage in its development and then makes the effort and has the understanding and then makes the effort to pierce through this knot of Rag and Dvesh or attachment and hatred and reaches a level of understanding, it is that moment that it achieves what is called Bodhi or Samyaktva. Now that process is extremely rare. That is why this is called Bodhi Durlabh. To the stage when the soul actually enters the Charamavarth card, and the stage before that is called Acharmavarth, meaning that there is no limit to how long you will carry on circulating in this life with this movement from one life to another. That is called Acharmavat. But when the soul enters the Charmavat car, spiritual development begins with a process which is very aptly and nicely described in Jainism as called a Nadi Ghol Pashan Nyay. And I think I've probably mentioned this before. It's like a river stone that you may see on a beach somewhere or at the banks of rivers. You would see a rounded, smooth stone. And if you imagine where that stone has come from and how it actually got rounded, it has gone from mountains and traveled down miles and miles and sometimes hundreds of miles of along the river, being beaten up against other rocks and slowly losing its rough edges and becoming smoother and smoother and smoother until it finds its way at the bottom of a river or at the bottom of the ocean or on a beach or the banks of the sea or the banks of a river. And that smooth rounded stone and that process is called Nadi Ghol Pashan. Nadi is river, Ghol is to be beaten up, and Pashan is stone. So the stone that has been beaten up through its journey slowly loses its rough edges and becomes smooth. So the soul, in a similar way, goes through life without any real effort. And we reach to a stage of spiritual development when we begin to lose our rough edges, not because of any particular effort on our part, but because we have just been beaten down to submission. We have suffered and suffered and suffered, and the level of our bad karmas has got to a level where we just suddenly begin to see some light and begin to then improve spiritually. But that is not what is called bodhi. And then when we progress and reach that stage where I talked about the soul making an effort to pierce that knot of rag and dvesh, that particular moment is the achievement of samyaktva. And from that moment onwards, the soul's remaining journey towards moksha is now suddenly become extremely limited. So instead of one charmavarth, it becomes half a charmavarth. So a huge amount of the future journey has been shortened by that one step. So that is the second lottery that the soul in its spiritual development will ever win. And that is beyond any comparison in terms of what that means to our future happiness. I'll end there, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Let me stop sharing this. And I'm going to share the questions that were one second. Okay. So I'll let you ask the questions, but I've got a couple of questions from last time. So as I said, we've not really covered this great topic of the 12 bhavanas in a huge amount of depth, but this is something that we can discuss every day for the next 6 months and still not get over it. But I hope that this has a visual stop tour has given you an understanding and an interest in learning more about it. So the questions that were raised last time, I think we answered some of them. How do souls leave Nigod? Do they have to do karma nejra in order to do this? I answered that last time and again, basically, and I think whoever Bijal asked that question, so I hope that the answer was satisfactory. So basically, souls live in Nigod by pure chance when somebody goes to moksha. Next question, how do you know when you got rid of all the karmas? Again, we answered that when you achieve Kevalgnan, you achieve Kevalgnan, and you would know that. What stops you from getting more karmas at that time? Because the nature of your development at the time that you achieve Kevalgnan is in a completely pure state, and you wouldn't be acquiring any new karmas except the Sata Vedaniya karma until the end of the body's lifespan, and then you would go straight to moksha. And that is not because you are exercising any kashai or any ignorance. So there is no mithyatva, there is no kashai at that point. There is no krodh, man, maya, lobh. So you're not acquiring any other karmas. All you have is your body and your power of speech and your mind, which again is all inactive. It is nirvikalp. Can you only achieve Kevalgnan in human form? The answer is yes. Is Narak the lowest place a soul can go if the karma are so sticky? Yes, but I also mentioned that Nigod is probably a worse place than Narak, because in Narak at least you have a mind and you have an understanding of the true nature of yourself. Give me just 1 second. Give me 1 second. Apologies to open the door. Yeah. So can you also achieve Kevalgnan and only achieve Kevalgnan in the human form? Absolutely. There's no other life through which the door to moksha is open, and you cannot achieve Kevalgnan in any other form. Is Narak the lowest place? We answered that. How does it get determined how you go to the other kshetras? It's natural. There are no rules. We have traveled from one point in the universe to the absolute opposite right at the other end many, many times. So it all depends on what our associations are, what our karma is, and how it's going to get translated into it showing its effect. Does your punya have to be more strong to bypass Devlok and go to Mahavide Kshetra? It depends on what kind of punya, but if you got a lot of punya, then you've got to spend that as well. And Devlok is the place to spend punya, basically, because that capital that you build can only be exercised at the highest place, and depending on how much of that capital, it depends on how high you go. But at the highest Devloks, the lifespans are huge, and their pleasures are actually very much spiritual, but their level of happiness is greater than a lot of the devs at the lower devloks. Is there a link between tattva and bhavnas? Bhavnas, the now tattva that we are talking about, does include ashrav, samvar, nijara, bandh, moksha. So the now tattvas, a lot of the concepts that we are exploring in the bhavnas are also covered in the 9 tattvas or the 7 tattvas that Jainism talks about. Jeev, ajeev, punya, pap, ashrav, samvar, nijara, bandh, moksha. Okay, so those are the asked questions from last time. Any questions from today?
Ajit Pai, I have a couple sent to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
The first one's from Bijal.
Mhm.
By accumulating good karma, we can go to Devlok. What needs to be done in order to bypass Devlok and go to Mahavideksha Shitra?
Yes, I think that was the question earlier. Let me just.
Is it only Diksha that enables one to be born in Mahavideksha Shatra?
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. So, Bijal, you are the acquisition of punya is one. How that punya karma translates into your further spiritual progress. So, Mavidya Kshetra is where we currently have Tirthankars, and we would always have Dharma and Tirthankars would be around, or the Keval Gnani Munis would be present. And that is a place where you would be able to develop spiritually and progress towards moksha in that life, or at least build up some great uh, spiritual qualities that would aid you in lessening your future births. Not everybody in Mavidya Kshetra goes to moksha. They have similar uh, kind of uh, arrangements as we have here. Uh, so, but it is a place where the doors, if your time has come and you are able to develop spiritually, you can. Now, the level of material happiness that you might experience there may be limited. So, if you've not acquired punya, that is bound to give you a huge amount of material happiness, and you have formed an Ayushya karma at a time when all that punya karma has been accumulated and has to be spent, then you may form the karma, Ayushya karma for the next life to go to Devlok. But if you are spiritually very inclined and progress, now by that I mean that if you are constantly focused on acquiring or achieving a level of goodness or being which is more and more nearer to your true self, then you may get an opportunity. But Mavidya Kshetra is not necessarily something that absolute in this particular sort of time. So, for example, the remaining part of this fifth and the sixth ara is about 39,000 years plus. There's 42,000 years in the next first and second aras in this place. But then gradually things begin to improve, and the road to moksha will again become open in this Bharat. Similarly, there are other 4 Bharat, there are other 5 Airavat Kshetras, there are 5 Mavidya Kshetras. So, where our journey will take us and how we are likely to end up, uh, and where and when and for how long, it all depends on the balance of karmas, on the balance of uh, where we are. So, as I said, not everybody from Mahavidya Kshetra goes to moksha. Not everybody from Bharat Kshetra and Airavat Kshetra at this time will go down. There are lots of souls which will go to Devlok. There may be lots of them who go to Mahavidya Kshetra. But from these kshetras where we are, nobody will go to moksha until quite a long time in the future. Okay.
Thank you. Another one is ever since I was a child, I have questioned, do I really exist? Is this the same as what is my purpose? I still to this date wonder where the thought of do I really exist has come from.
Who's asking that question?
They wish to remain anonymous.
Okay, fine. No, it's a very interesting question, and it's something that you need to explore, because you got to first of all define what is existence and what concept that you are trying to establish it, the meaning of existence. So where you are, there are faiths which are talking about, and if you look at some Hindu texts, they talk about all this is an illusion, meaning that it is a dream-like state, that you're only dreaming it, you don't really exist. And therefore, nothing is real. And it's all imaginary and all in your mind. So then the question arises, if everything that I see around me is imaginary, it's just a dream-like state, then do I really exist? The part answer to that is that I have to exist. I am because I think. But then we come to a deeper question, as we discussed earlier. We keep on saying my mind and I think. Who is it that thinks? The one who says that he thinks has to be different from those thoughts. So just like the other senses, the mind and the thoughts are a function of, it's a highly developed sense. So if the doubt remains in your mind that all this and me, myself, is not real, then what is it that you experience as a result of your progress through life? What is it that if you do not exist and if this is not real, then what is that moral thread that guides you to doing something good or sticking to a path? So this is also partly this concept of knowledge. It is called, if you look at some totally materialistic faiths, you're talking about that the soul does not exist, that all life or everything is just formed of material, Panch Mahabhut, that is called Charvaka Darshan, and we have a version of this, not exactly described in that, but the totally materialistic viewpoint, that the only thing that exists is what we see with our naked eyes, and what we see with our eyes is just material, and every thought and everything is just a function of that material, and we trace it down to genes, but we do not have an explanation of where that genetic codes came from. We do not have a total explanation, because if it is completely materialistic, that everything is down to combination of amino acids, that there was nothing before people, nothing before protoplasm, that is how life developed. All that becomes quite difficult to explain when you're talking about the spirit, which you have to accept as an experience which comes from somewhere, because all our experiences are different. And there has to be a reason why some of us enjoy some things, some of us suffer some things. There has to be a just reason for that. There has to be a sense of justice within nature, and that is what nature is. It has got a system, and it is a balance between you realizing your true nature, meaning the soul, as opposed to the material that you have enveloped yourself with. Hope that goes somewhere, but you're asking a very deep fundamental question. And what I would refer to, if you are if you can read Gujarati, then there is a stavan by Anand Ganji called Naminath Bhagwan Stavan. The 20 first Tirthankar Stavan, where he discusses the various 6 different philosophies, or Shat Darshan as it called, and he describes its relationship to the Jain teachings of Syadvad, and how you can relate these all different experiences. And what you are asking about relates to what is called Charvak Darshan, which is the complete materialistic belief. Okay.
Thank you, Ajit Bhai.
But we can discuss this at some stage when you got more time and I've got more time. I think about a few hours of time here, but okay. Is next. Anything else?
One last question
Yeah.
from Bijal. Please, can you restate what you said about Alokakash, about the soul traveling to Siddhshila? Does the soul stay in the same form as it goes there, or does it change as there is nobody or material, as you mentioned?
The soul in its free stage stays the same. The soul, as I said last time, when it gets rid of all the karmas towards the end, from the time that before the time it goes to moksha, within a short while it expands to touch all corners of the universe, and then shoots straight up to rest at the point where Lokakash and Alokakash meet, because it cannot travel beyond that border, because there is no medium for it to travel. So the soul's natural state is to go straight upwards. And within this Adidvip that we talked about, wherever the soul is, its journey from that point to moksha is straight upwards. So a soul can only go to moksha within that Adidvip. That Adidvip in total has got a diameter of 45 lakh yojans. And the Siddhshila's diameter is also 45 lakh yojans, and which is directly, totally vertically above the Adidvip. So any soul which goes to moksha from any point in Adidvip will shoot straight up and come to rest at the border of Lokakash and Alokakash. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ajit Bhai. I don't have any other questions now.
Okay. Kavit?
I have one question, but I think this has been asked before.
Yeah.
Can anyone get samyaktva in this life in Kali Yuga?
Yes, samyaktva is possible, but not kshaik samyaktva, meaning a kind of samyaktva that comes and goes. is possible, but permanent samyaktva is not possible in this life where we are in the place that we are at the moment, because that level of spiritual development cannot progress that far. But there are different kinds of stages of samyaktva. Aupsamik samyaktva, kshayopsamik samyaktva, and kshayik samyaktva. So 3 different types. The final one that once it's come never goes is called kshayik samyaktva. Kshay upsamik is when some karmas, ammonia karma, has been got rid of completely, and some have settled down, as in the bottom of a river when the water at the top becomes clear, when all the soil and the dirt has settled down, so the top surface is clear. That is called kshay upsamik. And aupsamik samyaktva is when all the mithyatva ammonia karma has settled right down at the bottom, though it hasn't been got rid of, and it has gone down, but that is a very temporary phase. But the soul then realizes its true nature, and at that stage realizes the true nature of God, of Guru and Dharma, and then after a while loses it all, because like in a river, you disturb it and all the soil then comes back up again, and that water which was completely clear now becomes muddy and solid. So it is that kind of samyaktva that is called aupsamik samyaktva. Then there's kshayupsamik samyaktva, and the best one, the last one, is kshayik, meaning you got rid of your ammonia karma to an extent where you're not going to acquire the degree of those karmas again. But we cannot acquire that kind of samyaktva in this day and age. Okay, that was it.
I think that's all we have for today.
Yeah.
So if you want to close the meeting.
Yeah, I'll close the meeting just quickly. I'm away for 3 weeks, and you have Rajiv, who is going to talk to you. I think you all probably received a message from Sandipai with respect to that. So for the next 3 weeks, from 7th, 14th, and 21st of February, I'm not here, and I think we'll be back on the 1st of February. I think that's a Tuesday, 1st of March. I think Rajiv is talking about the Bhav Yatra of Satrunjay and others. So it'll be very interesting, informative class. So enjoy that. And if I've said anything that is against the teachings of great Tirthakas, Michhami Dukram, Manusankaya Hitas Michhami Dukram. Hope you all have learned something which carries on. We'll explore a different topic after I come back, and we are looking at a different kind of much more basic class, which I'm discussing with Sandipai. So we'll hear more about that. Thank you all for being here and for accompanying me on this journey that I've been learning as well with. Thank you. Thank you, Meera, Kavit. Thank you both very much for all the support that you've given me in the last several weeks. I've lost count of how many weeks.